Every strong argument, every truly persuasive paper is built just like an airtight legal case. It all comes down to the quality of your evidence. But where do you find it? And how do you know what's a real clue versus what's just noise? Well, today, we're going to crack open the ultimate researcher's toolkit, and we're pulling every single technique straight from Mohammed AbdEllah's amazing book, Academic Writing, Simple Concepts and Easy Skills. All right, let's get into it. It really all comes down to this one question, right? How do you build a case that's so solid, so backed up by facts, that it can stand up to any challenge? The secret isn't about having the loudest opinion. Nope, it's about having the strongest evidence. So our mission today is to become master detectives of research, learning how to find, analyze, and use that evidence effectively. So here's our mission briefing for today. First, we'll learn to tell the difference between raw clues and hard evidence. Then, we're going to classify those clues, figure out how to interrogate them for insights, hunt down some reliable intel, and finally, we'll vet every single source to make sure our case is absolutely bulletproof. Okay, first things first. Every great investigator knows the difference between a random clue and a solid piece of evidence. And you know what? Mastering this distinction is the foundation for all good research. It sounds simple, but trust me, it changes everything. Think of data as the raw clues you'd find scattered at a crime scene. A number, a single statistic, one little observation. It's the fingerprint on the doorknob, the footprint in the mud. By itself, it's just a fact, without a story. It's where the investigation starts. Information, on the other hand, well, that's what happens when you start connecting those clues. It's that aha moment when you run the fingerprint and get a match. You've processed that raw data, you've given it context, and you've turned it into something meaningful that actually helps you solve the case. Let's see this in action. Here's our first clue. Let's pin it to the evidence board. 110,000 students were enrolled this year. Okay, that's a solid fact, a piece of raw data, but on its own, what does it really tell us, honestly? Not much. Now we find a second clue. Last year, the number was 100,000. All right, we'll pin that one up on the board right next to the first one. So now we've got two isolated facts. The picture's getting a little clearer, but we're not quite there yet. And this is where the magic happens. By comparing those two pieces of data, we create information. We see that enrollment jumped by 10%, and it turns out that's the biggest leap on record. All of a sudden, those two numbers tell a really powerful story. See? That's not just a clue anymore. That's real evidence you can build an entire case on. So here's the thing. Just like in a real investigation, not all clues are created equal. A good researcher, a good detective, knows how to categorize their evidence to understand exactly what they're working with. This is how we start building a real strategy. First up, you've got your quantitative versus qualitative data. Quantitative is all about the numbers, the stuff you can count, the what and how many, like how many fans were in the stadium. Qualitative data, that's the why. It's the descriptive stuff, the insights you get from talking to people, like figuring out the reasons a team played so well. You absolutely need both to get the whole story. Next, you gotta ask, where did this clue come from? Primary data is the stuff you gather yourself. You're the detective on the ground, running the experiment, conducting the survey. Secondary data is when you dive into other people's case files, academic papers, government reports. You're analyzing evidence that somebody else already collected. And finally, what's the timeline of your evidence? Cross-sectional data is like taking a single photo of a crime scene. It's a snapshot of one specific moment in time. But longitudinal data? That's the surveillance footage. It tracks the same subjects over a long period, showing you patterns and how things change. One shows you a moment, the other tells you the story. Okay, so you've gathered your clues and you've sorted them into the right categories. Now the real detective work begins. It's time to put that data in the interrogation room and make it talk. So think of this as your four-step interrogation plan. You start with descriptive analysis, just the facts, what happened. Then you dig deeper with diagnostic. Okay, but why did it happen? From there, you can make a pretty good guess with predictive analysis. What's probably going to happen next? And you top it all off with prescriptive. Based on everything we know, what should we do about it? It's this logical path from understanding the past to actually shaping the future. So far, we've mostly been talking about working with raw data. But what about finding that high-quality intel that other experts have already processed for you? This is where you need to know exactly which tools to pull out of your kit. Think of these as your standard issue, always reliable tools. Libraries are absolute treasure troves. A quick search online is perfect for just getting the lay of the land. And of course, official websites from big organizations like the UN or the WHO, they're your go-to for solid, trustworthy information. Every detective starts here. But to crack the really tough cases, you need the specialized gear. Scholarly engines like Google Scholar cut right through the noise to the academic evidence. Open access repositories get you to the absolute front lines of new research. And these subject-specific databases, like PubMed for medicine, that's like having a direct line to the top experts in the world. Knowing these exist is a total game changer. Look, having the best toolkit in the world doesn't mean a thing if your technique is sloppy. You need some fieldcraft. Always start with a very precise search query. Know exactly what you're asking. Use multiple tools to check your info. Never just rely on one. And please, master those advanced search features. It's like having a universal key that only opens the doors you actually need. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most critical stage of the whole investigation. You've got a mountain of evidence and information in front of you, but is it any good? Before a single piece of that intel makes it into your final case, you have to vet it rigorously. So how do you do it? How do you tell a reliable witness from a shady informant? How do you know if the foundation you're building your whole argument on is solid rock or just sinking sand? This right here is your interrogation checklist for every single source you find. You have to ask, is it objective or does it have an agenda? Is it actually relevant to my case? Who wrote it and do they really know what they're talking about? Is the info still current? Who published it? And why was it even created? Was it to inform or to persuade me? And the biggest question of all, can they back up what they're saying with their own evidence? If a source fails this test, it's out. It's inadmissible, period. And there you have it. That's the core of the researcher's toolkit. You now know how to tell clues from evidence, how to classify your data, analyze it for insights, and how to find and seriously evaluate any source. The skills are yours, the tools are in your hands, so the only question left is, what case are you going to build first?